Great. Thank you so much for joining us today. I am Michelle Meyer from the Hazard Reduction and Recovery Center. And today our team is presenting our poster entitled Resilience in Recovery, Understanding Long-Term Recovery Group Coordination of Unmet Needs. And our team today includes Mason Alexander, myself, Haley Yell, Jordan Vick, Saul Romero, Adrian Rodriguez, Assad Abbas, Joy Simeon, Carly Purdom, and Galen Newman. And this includes both our PhD students as well as our undergraduate and master student researchers. And I will hand it over to them to talk us through our poster.
Hello, everyone. So as we know, the United States and the rest of the world are experiencing more devastating disasters at a higher frequency. Socially vulnerable communities are often disproportionately impacted due to a legacy of segregation and racism that dictate where they live, which is often in the most hazardous areas with low quality housing infrastructures. Due to the inequitable government processes that continue to generate and exacerbate the racial and economic inequality following a disaster, these communities are left with unmet needs and forced further into poverty, or these needs are addressed by the community itself. This catalyzes nonprofits to step up and help create a social safety net for these socially vulnerable populations experiencing disasters. These organizations help support the needs left unmet after things like insurance, personal savings, and government resources are exhausted. These organizations also respond to disasters that are too small to reach the threshold for a federal disaster declaration. One central way they do this is through the formation of long-term recovery groups that operate unmet needs tables. The efforts of these groups include construction coordination, case management of unmet needs, spiritual care, and volunteers and donated resources. There is currently no comprehensive list of these organizations, and there is little understanding of their impact in helping communities recover post-disaster. This research presents preliminary data from the first year of a 5-year project aimed at building a better understanding of the emergence and contribution to equitable community resilience of long-term recovery groups across the U.S. This research aims to document the extent of these long-term recovery groups by building a database with information on their organizational size, financials, and general operations. For this project, we used Texas as a case study. And now I will pass it over to Saul, who will be going over the research objectives and research methods.
Thank you. There are 2 objectives for this project. And the first objective is creating a data set. And that data set will consist of all of the long-term recovery groups in the United States. And so that data set will include the organizational size, financial situation, and their operational status. The second would be to identify the predictors that cause the development of such groups. And now we'll move on to the methods to achieve these 2 objectives. The team used secondary data collection as a motive to acquire data. First, online database searches were conducted state by state using a variation of keywords, such as the ones displayed on the poster. And the second thing would be that the team dove into national nonprofit partnerships such as United Way or Salvation Army in order to discover more groups. In a similar manner, we reviewed state and national VOADs or vocational or actually volunteer organizations active in disasters. And then the fourth thing would be in order to conduct some financial analysis, GuideStar, a nonprofit service engine was used. And then in order to acquire or to achieve our second objective, information was collected from sources such as FEMA, and then also not to include the newspaper databases that were used, news articles, and also financial forms such as Form 990s to get a picture of the financial situation of the organization. And now Haley will review the results from these methods.
Figure 1 shows the distribution of Texas counties with long-term recovery groups. The map shows that these groups are located mostly along the coast. After building long-term recovery group profiles and analyzing the data, we found that long-term recovery groups exist in about 20% of all Texas counties. 42 groups serve 50 counties. 5 of Texas's counties were covered by 2 groups, and 7 groups worked in more than 1 county. Less than half of the long-term recovery groups have official nonprofit status. Approximately 60% do not have official IRS information available. In long-term recovery groups as official nonprofits, it's a relatively new trend. We found start dates for 19 of the 42 long-term recovery groups. The earliest start dates were 2005, with 4 more groups forming between 2011 to 2013. Another 13 of these groups formed during or after 2015. Jordan will now discuss some of our results regarding disaster losses and the impacts long-term recovery groups have on the counties they serve.
The data set we have is a county level disaster data set for the United States. It covers natural disasters such as wildfires, hurricanes, and floods, and it goes from 1960 to 2018. These data are intended to help us understand the role that long-term recovery groups, or LTRGs, play in disaster recovery. There are 254 counties in Texas overall, and there are 50 counties that have LTRGs and 204 counties without them. In this graph, we show the mean, standard deviation, and median total damages for both of these groups. The average disaster losses in the counties with LTRGs was roughly 20 times as much as the counties that did not have LTRGs. And fatalities are also more than 4 times higher in our results for the counties that did have LTRGs. We think these data show a strong relationship between disaster losses and the presence of long-term recovery groups that should be investigated in the future. Thank you.
Thank you so much, team. And to finish this up, this is year 1 of our 5-year project. So we are going to continue this project by moving beyond Texas and reviewing LTRGs in the rest of the country, and then adding in additional secondary data on the counties to understand other indicators such as social vulnerability or housing indicators to identify where long-term recovery groups form. And then following that, we're going to do a survey of the long-term recovery groups that we found to fill in a lot of the missing information, including their operational status, decision to open, if they closed or when they closed, things about personnel, their collaboration with local government or other nonprofits, as well as how they specifically addressed unmet needs, including number of cases, how they reported or did accountability metrics, or prioritized different types of unmet needs. So the research together will result in a training program that will assist long-term recovery groups in addressing disaster needs in their communities, as well as inform funders and other officials about what long-term recovery groups can do for the recovery of their vulnerable populations. And we want to give thanks to the National Science Foundation for their support of this project. And thank you so much for joining us today. And we look forward to answering any questions that you have.